of course, all guacamole starts with avocados, but there's some things that you need to know about avocados. Number one is that they take a really long time to come to maturity. 1 full year to come to maturity. Now, in 3 or 4 months, they'll get to this size, but they won't have any oil content at all. And that's what we love about avocados, is that you can mash them into this really rich, delicious mash. Okay, so they'll take the rest of that year just to come to their full oil content. But they'll never soften on the tree at all. You actually have to pick them off of the tree and leave them at room temperature in order for them to soften up. Now, if you pick them off the tree and you put them below 50 degrees, they'll just stay rock hard. They'll never trigger that softening process. That's why when you go to the grocery store, you're always finding a lot of rock hard avocados because they've been kept cold. They've been brought to room temperature so that you could buy them. But then they will take 5 to 7 days to completely soften up. And there's nothing much you can do about that. Yes, I know people put them in paper sacks on the countertop and they say that that speeds them up. But the scientists tell us that that speeds them up by an hour or so. So it's not, yeah, it does help because you're trapping ethylene gas that they naturally emit. And that will kind of speed them a little bit along, but not very much. Really, you're looking at 5 to 7 days. Or you can go to a Mexican grocery store where the clientele always demands ripe avocados or soft avocados, and you will find them there. So if you're making a lot of guacamole, that's my #1 recommendation. Now, they will start softening at the top and they will end softening at the bottom. So if you want to make guacamole, you're looking for the ripest or the softest avocado that you can possibly have. So you want to press it right there. And if it gives under firm pressure, then it's ready for your guacamole. Now, there's what I would call 2 stages of complete softness. There's the sushi bar stage where the sushi chefs want to slice them very thin. That's the stage before mashing to guacamole. So we want them absolutely, absolutely soft. When you buy them, you want to look for the little button end here, but that's the first thing that you want to get out of there. This helps to protect the top from any oxidation up there. So you want to pull that off. I'm going to make a batch of guacamole here with 3 avocados. It's a sort of nice amount, I think, to work with. Once you get the avocados ripe and you get the little button end out of there, you want to cut the 2 sides apart. And I always do that by starting up here at the stem end, going down to the blossom end, and then back around again, and then twist the 2 sides apart like that. Okay, I'm going to do that to all 3 of these guys here, just cutting around them like that, twisting the 2 sides apart. You'll notice that these so far that I've opened up haven't had any bruises in them at all. That's because these came from our restaurant and we don't ever take them out of the container that they are shipped in, which the shipping container for avocados has little nests for each avocado. They are very tender. If you dump a whole case of avocados out, just like you would often see in a grocery store, you can be guaranteed that wherever they hit, they're probably going to be bruised. Okay, so even if they're pretty hard when they go out there, they will be bruised a little bit. You don't have to worry about that bruise. It's just discolored and it's not going to affect your flavor very much, so you can mix it in or you can use a spoon to get it out. Now, our next step, of course, is that we need to take the pit out, and I use the standard prep cook version of this, which is to lodge the knife blade, the end of the knife blade like that, into the pit. But you could also just use a large spoon and get it out. I find that I am always chasing the pits around when I do that. So my way of doing it is to just simply use the knife to wedge into it and then twist. Now, with a large spoon, because we're working here with Hass avocados, which is probably what you're all going to be working with, because that accounts for about 90-some% of all avocados grown in the world, and they are the creamiest, really. And they have a really tough skin, so we can take a large spoon and go in here and scoop directly against the skin like that. These are so beautiful and perfectly ripe that this happens very simply. You're not going to really mess with anything. You're not going to struggle with anything. That flesh just comes out right like that. I noticed that this one right at the very top had some dark spots here right where the stem was. So I can just put my spoon in just right there and then go around here and scrape out the flesh from the rest of all of that. I think this piece looks like it's in good shape here. Okay, so we've got now the flesh scooped out of the skins of these Hass avocados. Our next step, and this is where you start making it your own guacamole. I'm going to show you my guacamole in a super classic way, but all guacamoles need to start with a seasoned base. So there's two things that avocados don't have any of. One is acid. There's just no acid in them. You think about a lot of other fruits, and these are technically a fruit, they will have a lot of acid in them. So you might not have to add acid to them, but avocados, no acid. So we're going to want to add some acid. The second thing is that they are super low in salt. So we want to make sure that we get it seasoned with salt. And in this case, lime. You could use lemon juice, but in Mexico, they don't really use lemons. So we're going to use some lime juice in it here. So I'm going to sprinkle my salt over the top of it. I've got a lime here that I'm going to crush in the Mexican lime juicer. So open that up. If you haven't used one of these things before, I will tell you, you need one in your kitchen because it's the best way to juice limes, but you don't put it in there like it looks like you would. You don't set it that way. You turn it upside down, and then we're actually going to turn that lime inside out as we are crushing it here. And as that juice comes out, we're also crushing the skin, which is where all the flavor of lime is in this, the oil that's in the skin. So I'm going to crush it here, and I'm going to squeeze in some lime. Okay, now here's where we got to have a little discussion about how much lime goes in there, because in Mexico, it's 0 to a tiny bit. In the United States, it seems like it's just massive amounts of lime. And lime fights with the flavor of avocado. It can obliterate it really fast. So I'm going to encourage you to start with no more than a tablespoon of lime for 3 avocados, and that will give you a basic place to start with. If you're interested in the idea that lime will keep it from oxidizing, turning dark during the party, I'm going to ask you to just hold on that for a minute. Let's talk about flavor first, because that to me is the most important thing. Now we're going to we've seasoned the base of this guacamole now with the lime and the salt, but we're going to mash those seasonings into it. And you can see here I'm just using like the old-fashioned potato masher, which to me is the best piece of kitchen equipment to work with for making guacamole, because just a few passes like that will give us this really chunky guacamole. I like chunky guacamole. I don't like pureed guacamole at all. I think that the chunkiness allows you to really appreciate the avocado for what it brings to the guacamole. Okay, so now in Mexico, for a lot of people, this would be guacamole. And I know that'll come as a surprise to a lot of you. But in Mexico, they are going to use this as a condiment. And so if you think about a perfect steak taco, say, and you've got a warm corn tortilla, and you've got some grilled steak on top of that, you've got a spoonful of this, and then you get salsa. Let's go to one of the really classic salsas, like salsa mexicana, or what we would often call pico de gallo in the United States. And it is 4 ingredients. Everyone can say what those 4 ingredients are. Of course, we start with tomato, right? And then there's some onion in it. Then there's some cilantro for herbiness, and there's some kind of green chili for heat. Okay, those are the 4 classic ingredients that if you're going to make what would oftentimes be called a guacamole compuesto, or like elaborated with other things for a chip dip, you're basically taking that steak taco idea and combining the guacamole that is a condiment with the salsa. But each one of those ingredients brings something different to the end result. So let's talk about what they are, because this is where you start making this guacamole your own. You'll make your own signature guacamole based on how much of each ingredient you like. So of course the tomato brings a touch of sweetness to this guacamole. The white onion will bring a really nice fresh crunch. And then the green chili, of course, will bring heat, and the cilantro will bring an herby quality. After you get comfortable with those 4 ingredients, you can start to play around not only with the quantities that you put in and see what you like, but you'll also be able to start replacing some of them. It's mango season where I am right now, and so maybe you want to put some mango in this in place of the tomato. That'd be a kind of wacky guacamole, but when I think about mango and that sweetness that it brings, and it's so delicious with avocado, why not? And then the onion, well, mango and red onion go really well, so maybe we'll change the white onion for red onion. And instead of cilantro, mint is spectacular in there. And maybe if I like some spicy stuff and I wanted to add something that had that tropical element to it, we could do a little bit of habanero chopped up in here. So suddenly you see that guacamole is sort of like a foundation or framework kind of recipe. And from that, you can start to be creative and to do your own thing. So let's make this very super classic guacamole right here. Let's start with the tomato. And I would say that if you're gonna put tomato in here, I don't like a ton of tomato in mine. And so I'm gonna say that someplace in the neighborhood of about 1/3 of a cup, but maybe you wanna go all the way up to a 2/3 of a cup of tomato if you really like a lot of that in there. But the one thing that I'm going to suggest that you do is to cut the tomato carefully so that it's not all mushed up, because I think you want to contain the flavor of the tomato so that when you taste it, you're getting little bursts of its natural sweetness. So I'm taking each one of my slices here and cutting them crosswise and then into small little dice. And that will be about enough for me. It wasn't even a whole small tomato to get to my 1/3 of a cup here. So I'm going to put this now onto the mashed and seasoned avocado base. Then, yeah, again, you have to decide how much chili you want to have in here. In Mexico, they typically, when making salsas, will not take the seeds and the veins out. The veins is the place where you're going to find all of that capsaicin or the hot part concentrated. So if you want to make this less spicy but use a lot of that green chili flavor, I suggest that you take the seed pod, the veins, and the seeds out. But what I want is a small amount of green chili flavor and a good amount of heat. So I'm just going to cut each one of these pieces or these halves of 1 serrano. This is, for me, exactly what I would like to have. I'm going to cut each one in 3 strips and then cut crosswise to make little tiny dice. Now, with the chili, some people don't like to bite on pieces that are that big. So you might want to do the final rocking and chopping like this to get those pieces much smaller. Just a few times back and forth on the chili will give you a very, very fine, almost a mince here in all of that. Okay, so let's slide that up here. And then let's do next our cilantro. This is washed and pretty dried cilantro. It's still a tiny bit damp, but I can still show you exactly the way that you would chop your cilantro in the classic Mexican way and for good distribution of all of the flavors through all of this. But I want to make sure that my cutting board is really dry and free of everything else. So I am going to basically take a handful of cilantro here and bunch it up at the top like that, folding under the top pieces so that it's quite firmly bunched. And then I'm going to do a very thin slice. What you would learn in culinary school is a chiffonade, and you're going to cut across the stems and everything and keep going with that until you run out of leaves, which I've basically done there. A couple of pieces didn't get very well chopped, so I'll go back and get those. Now, you'll see how beautifully light and fluffy this is. The nice thing about this is chopped cilantro like this, if you cover it with plastic wrap, will last for more than a day in your refrigerator. But of course, we're going to use it right now. Now, our last ingredient is the onion. And of course, in Mexico, they use white onions almost exclusively for salsas and for making guacamole. So we've got this white onion here, very different flavor, much crisper, cleaner, brighter flavor than a yellow onion, which tends to go sweeter and more complex. But we're looking for brightness here, and that's why in Mexico they always use a white onion. And I want I'm going to say about 1/4 cup of this. So I'm just going to slice off a piece of it because that will be enough for me for this particular preparation. And then I'm going to cut across like this, and then sort of utilizing the basic structure of the onion, do my chopping by starting almost parallel to the cutting board and cutting crosswise and then raising my knife up. When I get all the way to the top, then I'll flip it over to the other side and do the same thing until I get all of it cut there. Now, the one thing that I will say, using a raw onion either in a salsa or in guacamole like this, which is basically like a salsa, we have created a sulfurous compound in this by cutting through the cell walls of the onion and having that sulfurous compound. First of all, it will spoil or sour really quickly. It's what gives you onion breath. It's what makes your eyes water. A lot of people find it really indigestible. And so you created it. You can get rid of it. I've got a simple strainer here, and I'm going to scrape all of that onion into it. And I'm just going to go to the sink and rinse it under cold water. I'm just rinsing it off here. So shake that. Once you've gotten it well rinsed, some people actually like to soak this in cold water with a touch of lime juice or vinegar. That almost slightly pickles it. I don't think that's really necessary, but rinsing I do think is necessary. And then we'll put that there. I don't think I'm even going to use all that I chopped up. You can see my quantities here because we have our tomato, green chili, much smaller quantity, the cilantro, and the onions, the rinsed onions there. And then all of this just gets folded together. And we'll give it a taste and see. Again, all of those quantities are completely variable based on what you like. This is the kind of guacamole that I like to make if I'm looking for that chip dip. And then I'm going to give it just a little taste to make sure that we got enough lime, enough salt, and enough of everything else. What I love about guacamole is good avocados, and that's what's coming through here. I haven't added so much of everything else that I ended up with a tomato salad with a little avocado in it. That can be good too, but I don't think it's guacamole. I like to put it out for everybody to dip their chips into, so that's the way I've set this up here. Of course, you can always put a little bit more chopped onion and cilantro on the top of it if you would like to do that. I'm just going to take a little bit of cilantro here from this batch of cilantro that I've got here just to lay across the top here and make it really presentable, because probably if you're making guacamole, you're having a party, and this is something that everybody loves at their party. I hope you enjoy getting in the kitchen and making your signature guacamole and respecting that sort of structure of how a great guacamole is made, but making it your own.